In this video, I am going to discuss Robert Browning's poem, The Patriot. So before getting into the line-by-line analysis of this poem, I would be giving a brief introduction to Robert Browning and his times. Robert Browning belongs to the Victorian period of English history, and this is the time that roughly spans from 1832 up to 1900. So almost a major part of the 19th century is covered by this Victorian period. This was the time when Victoria was reigning in England, and the country was going through its peak of prosperity and success because of the business growing imperialism or colonization, and also because of the development in industries during this time, the industrial revolution that is. We see that England made exceptional profit and it became a very rich and powerful country. Because there was richness, because there was prosperity in the country, literature also got a boost, and we find some of the greatest writers of English literature are born and flourished during this time. So Robert Browning is considered to be one of the greatest poets in English literature in general, and if we speak about the Victorian age, he is considered to be one of the greatest leading figures in that particular period. Robert Browning wrote poems as well as drama about the human psyche, about the mind of his character, revealing the mind of his characters. And this kind of poetry that Robert Browning made extremely famous in English is called dramatic monologue. So our poem, The Patriot, also belongs to the category of dramatic monologue. In this poem, we find that there is a speaker who reveals to a listener some important facts, some important details about his life. And after going through those facts and details, we can frame a character, we can analyze the character of the speaker. So this is the principal characteristic of a dramatic monologue, which is a style of writing poetry. And as I just now said, that this style of writing poetry, although it was prevalent in England for a very long time, or in other literatures also, but Robert Browning in the 19th century made dramatic monologue most famous. So there are some particular features of a dramatic monologue. First of all, there will be a speaker, and this speaker will reveal some important facts, some important details about his life through the poem. Secondly, there would be a listener in the poem, but the listener would not speak anything. So if the listener speaks and the speaker says something and the listener replies, then it will be no longer be a monologue, it will become a dialogue. But in this kind of poem, there is only one speaker, and if there is at all a listener, then the listener is listening silently to what the speaker is telling. That is another very important feature of the dramatic monologue. And finally, a dramatic monologue must reveal the character of the speaker. By reading his speech or by hearing what the character has to say, we can make up a character analysis in our mind. So dramatic monologues are known to reveal the inner feelings and thoughts of the characters, which helps the audience or the readers to understand what is going in the mind of a character. So in this poem also we will find that all the major features of a dramatic monologue are successfully represented, because it is one of the creations of Robert Browning, who has written some exceptionally popular dramatic monologues like Last Ride Together, Porphyria's Lover, My Last Duchess, etc. And here also we see that he has used all the techniques of dramatic monologue to make this poem a success. So now let's go into the line-by-line analysis of this poem, and if I find any figure of speech used, then definitely I'm going to explain it, and also the symbols, I'm going to explain them. So the poem, you can see, is divided into several sections. Let's start with the first section, section number 1. It was roses, roses all the way, with myrtle mixed in my path like mad. The house roof seemed to heave and sway, the church spires flamed, such flags they had a year ago on this very day. So, the first stanza, the first section of this poem reveals how things were in the flashback. We all know what is a flashback. Flashback means when we are in the present but we are hearing something or speaking something about the past. So our central character, that is the Patriot, we don't know his name, so let's call him the Patriot according to the title of this poem. So this Mr. Patriot, he tells that 1 year ago the things were very very pleasant for him, because it seemed that he was returning after a great victory and the people were all around him cheering and celebrating his return. How were they celebrating? They were throwing petals of rose to welcome him. And mixed with these petals of roses, there were other flowers also, like myrtle. And myrtle is basically a kind of white flower which symbolizes welcome. So rose and myrtle, all these kind of flowers, they symbolize welcome. And our character is heartily welcomed, our Patriot is heartily welcomed by the people of the town. That is why the way through which he is walking is completely spread with petals of beautiful flowers. See, there is a repetition of the word roses, roses. In poetry, whenever we see repetition, we should realize that the poet is trying to emphasize it. So there was not some rose petals sprinkled. Rather, the whole way was paved with rose petals to highlight the numerous rose petals that were spread all around. The poet is repeating the word roses, roses. And also it's highlighting the enthusiasm of the people, how eager, how excited they were. That is why they had paved the entire way with flowers of red and white colors. And mixed in my path like mad, that means too much of flowers. There was no proper sequence in which people had decorated the path. It's not like people had made a rangoli with some flower petals, not like that. It was mixed like mad. That means people had just brought flowers and dumped it on the road. They were so eager, they were so excited to welcome this hero, this Patriot, that they had just dumped the flower petals all around the road. And what were the people doing after dumping all the flowers? House roofs seemed to heave and sway. The people were basically standing on the house roofs. So this is a very common sight in our country also. You might have seen when a procession is going on or some important political leader or film star is moving around, people love to come out of their houses and see. So sometimes they are crammed on the sides of the roads, sometimes they stand on the balconies, or sometimes they stand on the house tops. So in this case, the people were standing at the tops of the houses and they were so much eager and so enthusiastic that their enthusiasm seems to be shared by the housetops itself. It seemed that the housetops were moving because of excitement. Of course, that is not possible. So we get a figure of speech here. House roofs seemed to heave and sway. This is an example of personification. First of all, this is a personification because you are personifying the house roof that is seeming to move and to sway. What is heave? Heave means to breathe deeply. When you are very excited, when you are very thrilled, you take a deep breath. That is heaving. And swaying means to move. So the people are so excited that they are deeply breathing to meet their hero, their Patriot. And they are also moving, swaying. Maybe they are shaking their hands in order to cheer him or cheer for him. So because of the enthusiasm because of the excitement of the people, it seemed as if the house roofs were itself moving. But we know that house roof is an inanimate object. It is a non-living object. It can't move. It can't breathe. So the poet is giving human qualities to the house roof. The poet is telling that the house roof seemed to move, or the house roof seemed to be breathing deeply, which is giving human qualities to a non-living thing, and that is why this is an example of personification. But this is not just a personification, this is also, we are getting one more figure of speech, that is a metaphor. So we see that the poet is trying to say here that the people who are standing on the house roofs, they are breathing deeply and they are moving, and it seemed that the house roof was also moving and breathing. So the poet is comparing the excitement of the excitement of the people to the excitement of the house roofs, and that is why this is an example of personification. At the same time, this can be considered as an example of metaphor. The church spires flamed, such flags they had. This is also a metaphor. The church spires, the church spire means the top of the churches. You might have seen that sometimes churches have tall minar-like structures, and the top portion of that minar had a roof. So some people are standing at the roof of the minars, and those minars are called spires, and people are waving flags of various bright colors from the top of the churches. So because of that bright orange or red color of those flags, it seemed as if the minars or the spires of the church were burning. So poet is comparing something burning to the waving of the flags at the top of the spires, and that is why this is an example of metaphor. The church spires flamed, such flags they had. A year ago on this very day. So with this line, the poet is finally confirming, or rather we should say the patriot is finally confirming, that everything that has been described till now in the first 4 lines of the poem was a matter of past. It's nothing that's happening right now. It all happened in the past, on this particular day 1 year ago. So now we are moving to the second section. The air broke into a mist with bells. The old walls rocked with the crowds and cries. Had I said, good folks, mere noise repels, but give me your son from yonder skies, they had answered, and afterwards, what else? So this patriot is telling, he continues with the description of that day 1 year ago. What kind of excitement was there when people came to welcome him? So he says that the air was filled with the ringing of bells. As just like you imagine, in a winter morning, the air is filled with thick, heavy fog or mist. Similarly, in this case, the air is filled with not mist, not fog, but the excitement of the people. The ringing of the bell is filling the whole atmosphere. The whole ambience is filled with the ringing of the bell, as if it is like a curtain of mist or fog. The old walls rocked with the crowds and cries. Crowds and cries is an example of alliteration because C sound is used here, and the old walls rocked. Rocked means to vibrate, to shake. So the people were so eager and they were so much shouting and they made such a loud vibration that it seemed that the old buildings of the town, the walls and the minars and the palaces and whatever else was present in the town, they were also vibrating because of the shouting and cheering of the people. So the excitement level has been explained through this example, that because of the high level of excitement, because of the shouting of the people, there was a lot of vibration that could be felt on the walls of the city. So rocked means vibrated. The patriot here is making a hypothetical assumption. He says, the people were so happy to welcome me, the people were so eager to welcome me that they would be ready to do anything to make me happy. It's like when you see your favorite film star in front of your eyes. You lose all your senses. You say that I'm ready to do anything for you. If you want, I can just tear my chest and I can present my heart to you. I am so excited to see you in front of my eyes. So same thing with the people of this town also. They are so excited to meet our patriot that if, suppose, this is a supposition, this is not reality. Suppose if the patriot says that, guys, just shouting is not enough. Just making noise and waving flag is not enough to welcome me. Go and bring the sun for me. The people would have, in enthusiasm, ran to bring the sun for him, and after bringing the sun, they would have asked, what else do you want? So, bringing the sun from the sky is something impossible. I would not say next to impossible. It's absolutely impossible. But the people are so excited to welcome their hero that they would be ready to do anything, even if that sounds as impossible as bringing the sun from the sky. And even after fulfilling that impossible desire, the people would gladly say, do you want anything else? Are you satisfied with the sun, or do you need the moon and the stars or something else also? So that was the level of dedication that the people of this town had for this person. If he had asked, the people would have gladly brought the sun from the sky and asked, do you need anything else? So this portion, suppose from here, I should say, had I said, good folk, may a noise repels, but give me your sun from yonder skies, and they had answers, and afterwards what else? So this is basically a hyperbole. Hyperbole is a figure of speech in which we know that some simple thing is exaggerated beyond limits. So that high level of exaggeration is called hyperbole. So here also the patriot is just exaggerating thing. He is trying to say, in simple language, he is trying to say that people were ready to do anything for me. But instead of saying this so simply, he exaggerates it and says that people were ready to bring the sun from the sky for me and then ask me, do you want anything else? So this is an exaggeration, of course, and that is why this will fall under the category, under the figure of speech, hyperbole. Now, from section number 3 onwards, the poem takes a turn. So till now, in the first and second section, we got a description of the celebration. We saw how the day was when the patriot returned after maybe some victory or after some success, and how things were 1 year ago. But now things have changed, and why? We get a clue in section 3. So let's read and find out. Alack, it was I who leaped at the sun to give it to my loving friends to keep. Not man could do have I left undone, and you see my harvest, what I reap, this very day now a year is run. So he says that alack is an expression of sorrow. So he says that, like in India we say hi hi or ish. So it's like an expression of sorrow. He says that instead of asking for the sun from the people, I rather, out of overconfidence, tried to jump and bring the sun. So do you think it is possible? Of course not. Again, this is also an exaggeration, and naturally this is also hyperbole. So it was I who leaped at the sun. This is also another example of hyperbole, in which the patriot is trying to say that the people were ready to offer me everything, but instead of taking anything from them, I rather tried to do something even more extraordinary in order to win more fame, in order to win more popularity. So what I did something impossible. I jumped towards the sun. Don't take it in the face value. Don't think that literally the poet or the patriot tried to jump and bring the sun. It is spoken figuratively, symbolically. The poet is simply trying to say that he tried to do something impossible in order to please the people. See the second line, to give it my loving friends to keep. So to bring the sun and give it to my friends, to these followers, to my fans. So don't think that it's actually the poet going to bring the sun. This is an hyperbole, a figure of speech, and this is basically the poet speaking in figurative language, where he tries to say that I did something impossible to make my friends happy, to make my admirers, my fans happy. But did it make them happy? No. Not man could do have I left undone. Not, N-O-U-G-H-T, means nothing. Nothing a man can achieve did I leave untried. So I tried to do as much as the limits of human capacity would go in order to please the people. I was so much overconfident, seeing the faith of the public in me, seeing the happiness of the public in me. I was so overconfident that I took my limits to the extreme. I did something that the maximum strength of man would permit. So what it actually is, what did the patriot do, that is not specified here. And why is it not specified in the poem? Because if it was specified, suppose it said that the patriot is basically a cricketer and he tried to enhance his performance. He tried to win a special trophy for his followers by doping, by taking some medicine to enhance his performance. After all, his intention was good. His intention was to bring the trophy for his countrymen, but he took the wrong way. He did something that was not suitable for him. Then what would happen is the whole meaning of the poem will become limited to one particular direction. It will become a sports poem. But our poet wanted to keep it universal. He did not want to limit it to a particular maybe soldier or maybe a sports person or any other kind of actor, dramatist, anything. It can be anything, the mistake can be anything that is not specifically mentioned in the poem, because our poet wants us to interpret the poem as a universal truth. It's true that when you become overconfident and you try to go beyond your limits to achieve something, failure is possible. And that is why this message has been delivered by our poet. So he says that not man could do have I left undone. Anything that man could do, I tried to do it. Nothing that man could do was left untried by me. That is the meaning of this line. And you see my harvest, what I reap. This is a metaphor. He is comparing his success or his failure to harvest, to crop. So this is an agricultural metaphor in which the poet is comparing, or the patriot is comparing, his achievement or his failure with crop. So you might have heard a famous saying, as you sow, so shall you reap. If you sow wheat, you are going to reap wheat. If you sow rice, you are going to reap rice. You can't expect to get rice after sowing mustard. Or after sowing wheat, you can't expect to reap cotton. Of course, what you have sown, you are going to reap the same thing. So what you have invested, you are going to get return accordingly. And because our patriot, out of his overconfidence, invested something wrong, his return was also something absolutely wrong. So he says that see what I did and what I get back in return, what I harvest. Harvest here means get back. So what I get back in return, it's in front of you. Who is this you? This you is not the public. This you is basically the silent listener. So, and you see my harvest. This you is referring to the silent listener. It can be a single person, it can be a group of people, but he is speaking to someone, and that is the characteristic of a dramatic monologue, in which we find that our speaker is revealing his thoughts to a silent listener, and the listener is silently listening to it, not reacting, maybe reacting but not speaking anything. So here we see that the patriot speaks to the silent listener saying that, see what is my result. I tried to do my 100% for the public, or maybe 110%. I tried to stretch my limits. But see what I get in return. See what is my harvest. And when is this happening? Come to the present time. End of flashback. This very day, now a year is run. So the result can be seen on this particular day, now that 1 year is over. So what had happened at the first two sections of the poem was 1 year ago in this particular day. And what is going to happen in the next three sections is about today, the present time. So the third stanza, the third section is like a transition between the past and the present. Now before going to the next section, fourth section of the poem, I would also like to refer another episode here. See, when we are referring to the expression like I who leaped at the sun, immediately a very famous legend, a very famous story from the classical mythology comes to our mind. This is the story of Daedalus and his son Icarus. Maybe some of you have heard this story and some of you might not have. So I'm just in brief giving you a reference to this story so that you can relate why suddenly I mentioned these two characters in context with the poem. So basically, according to the story, Daedalus was a very expert architect, and the king, being jealous of his talent, told him to create a maze inside a small island. So Daedalus and his son Icarus went to that island and they created an excellent maze. A maze which was so confusing that once you enter inside it, you will not be able to come out of it. Maze is something that we call bhul bhulaiya in Hindi. So once you go inside the bhul bhulaiya, it's very difficult to crack the exit point of that maze. Because Daedalus was so expert, he created the maze and he waited for the king to come and rescue him from that maze. Because he himself did not know what was the way to escape. So he waited and waited, but finally when the king did not send anyone to save him from that maze, he realized that he was tricked by the king, and the king basically wanted to trap him in his own creation in that maze. So he was an expert in creating things. So he thought that, okay, I will accept the challenge and I will escape from this island, from this maze. How? So because it was an island, so many birds used to fly over it, and as the birds flew, their feathers fell into the maze. So Daedalus kept on collecting those feathers, and then he joined those feathers using some wax, and joining those feathers he made two pairs of wings for himself and his son Icarus, who was also present there. Now when the wings were ready, Daedalus and Icarus used those wings. They somehow attached those wings at their back and they flew very successfully. They flew out of that maze. So their plan was that they will fly out of the maze and they will come to the town. But as they were flying, Icarus just enjoyed the process of flight. It was like a very liberating experience for him. He was just feeling that the whole sky is waiting to welcome him. And that is why he kept on flying higher and higher and higher. Daedalus kept on telling Icarus that don't go so high because the heat of the sun will melt the wax and the wings will get detached and you will fall down. And exactly that happened. Because Icarus rose too high, his wings fell apart and he also fell down and drowned in the sea. So why did I refer to this story? Because I think some of you might have already figured out that this story is trying to tell you a moral that you should not try to fly too high. Being ambitious is good, but being over ambitious is not good. And that is what our poet in this poem Patriot is also trying to suggest. So many times we may wonder after reading the poem that what was the mistake of the patriot? Why was he punished? Because in the following sections we will realize that he had been punished. So we have to notice that he was punished because of being over ambitious. Due to his overconfidence, he tried to achieve something that was beyond his means. And in doing that, he lost the little thing that he had. The appreciation that he had, the success that he lost everything because of his overambition. So, when we are getting a reference to leaped at the sun, obviously this to a scholar of literature should bring back the image of Daedalus and Icarus. Maybe this reference is useful for you. So we are going to continue with the last three sections of this poem in the next part of this video.